Welcome to the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thanks for joining us. Of course, this is the free weekly newsletter that's published every week on MMAcycles.com by financial analyst and astrologer Ray Merriman, who for the last several weeks has been on vacation, but he is back, and boy is he back in this one. And I'll just say, stay till the third section, the long-term geocosmics, because he goes into some perspective on there that really pulls the context of this newsletter together. Let's jump in here for the weekend review. First of all, from the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, President Trump's attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook is the most dramatic step yet in his effort to take control of the independent central bank and its vast authority over interest rates. That written by Matt Grossman and Greg Ip. Now, Ray's comments on the weekend review, and welcome back, Ray. Many global stock indices continued making new highs earlier last week, despite being late and overdue in their primary cycles. This distortion of non-stop bullishness may be related to the unusual planetary configuration involving the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in harmonious sextile to both Uranus and Pluto, the latter two of which form a formidable trine aspect to one another. When aspects involving longer-term planets form, longer than usual rallies or declines in financial markets can also unfold. It appears that many global indices have been enjoying prolonged rallies since April 7th, despite growing anxieties regarding the uncertainty connected to global economic and political events. There seems to be no breakage of the underlying trend. The explosions to new highs may also be related to the August 24th cosmic setup with Jupiter, midway in a semi-square to both the Sun and Uranus, which were square to one another. When Jupiter and Uranus are involved in a tight orb aspect, breakouts of nearby support or resistance are common and tend to last up to 8 days. In Asia and the Pacific Rim, a new all-time high was notched in Australia's ASX index. China's Shanghai Composite soared to its highest level in 10 years, while the Hang Seng in Hong Kong soared to its highest mark since October 2021. Japan's Nikkei had made a new all-time high on August 19th. India's stock market, the Nifty, was not so fortunate following President Trump's levy of 50% tariffs on U.S. companies importing goods from India. The week was mixed for European stocks. Most ended modest rallies right into our August 22nd to 25th critical reversal date and the midpoint of a TUMDI signal. You'll hear more about that coming up. It's the Trump-Uranus Market Disruption Indicator. The Zurich SMI index was the most bullish in Europe, rising to a 10-week high. But each of the European indices then declined into the end of the week, which is the norm under a strong cosmic critical reversal date, which is why they are valuable market timing indicators. The indices in the Americas exhibited very interesting performances last week. Brazil's Bovespa has just exploded out of its primary cycle trough of July 28th and made a new all-time high at the end of last week. In the U.S., the S&P made a new all-time high on Thursday, August 28th. However, the all-time high in the Dow Jones Industrial Average was the prior week on August 22nd, and right in the middle of the powerful critical reversal date. In the Nasdaq, the new all-time high was 2 weeks ago, creating a rolling case of intermarket bearish divergence surrounding the August 22nd to 25th critical reversal date zone. This could be a sign that a serious correction might be starting. It's overdue, as indicated in the introduction, and intermarket divergence is often a trigger preceding sharp reversals. The highly charged geocosmic month of August was not limited to stocks. Bitcoin, for instance, made a new all-time high right in the middle of the month on August 14th at 124,480. 2 weeks later, on August 29th, it was below 108,000, a loss of 13% and its lowest mark in a month. Ethereum, however, made its all-time high 1 week later on August 24th, once again right in our most recent 3-star critical reversal zone, for yet another case of intermarket bearish divergence in a related market. Like Bitcoin, Ethereum also sold off into the end of last week, but not yet below the low of the prior week. Given that a major cycle low is due, and the moon is currently in Scorpio, most often bearish for Bitcoin, this could become a case of intermarket bullish divergence in an important geocosmic zone, a lunar cycle correlate in this case. In precious metals, the nearby December silver contract blasted off to $40.85, another new 13-plus year high. Gold was also quite bullish, with the December contract rising once again above $3,500, but still slightly below its all-time high of $35.34, registered during our prior critical reversal date, August 8th to 11th. Now, this week's short-term geocosmics, and a quote from the UBS weekly blog, Dr. Paul Donovan, from Friday. He says, inflation uncertainty risk increases the real borrowing cost for the government, which makes reducing deficits and debt levels more difficult. It increases real borrowing costs for the corporate sector, affecting investment and thus growth. It also increases real borrowing costs for households, affecting consumer spending and potentially housing. Finally, because investors are naturally risk-averse, once introduced, inflation uncertainty risk can take years to remove from the economy. The inflation uncertainty originating in the 1970s took over 20 years to be removed. End quote. And then from Chris Wood on his Substack blog Grizzle Research, "The stock market is eating the economy," is the headline from Wednesday. He says any short-term inflation effect from higher tariffs will likely not be sustainable, given the longer-term effect is deflationary, in the sense of the negative impact on consumers of what is effectively a tax hike. Meanwhile, the primarily retail-driven 33.8% rally in the S&P 500 off the tariff-triggered April 7th low makes it clearer than ever that the stock market has become almost more important for the consumption-driven U.S. economy than the economy itself. End quote. Ray's short-term geocosmics thoughts now. We are right in the midst of TUMDI, our newly introduced market timing signal. TUMDI stands for the Trump-Uranus Market Disruption Indicator. It occurs whenever Uranus is prominent in aspects to other planets or stationary, and tends to coincide with sudden, unexpected policy announcements, decisions, or statements by President Trump that rifle financial markets. On August 24th, the Sun squared Uranus, and midway between the two was Jupiter, forming a semi-square with both. On September 6th, Uranus will turn retrograde at 1 degree Gemini, another powerful TUMDI signal. The entire period is highlighted as a potential time band of disruptive announcements. So far, TUMDI has not disappointed. In the past week, Trump announced a 50% tariff on India, a major trading partner and the most populous country in the world. He fired Fed Governor Lisa Cook for a technical violation of banking or mortgage laws, similar to allegedly false statements he himself has made in applications for bank loans involving his own real estate dealings. He has threatened to send the National Guard into Chicago and New York City to quell violence when city leaders argue that crime is already declining. He is courting the idea of imposing tariffs on furniture and mail deliveries of goods into the United States from abroad, which will escalate regulatory chaos for U.S. businesses. And then there's the John Bolton house raid. Why? Really? Financial markets are reacting. The rally in the Dow Jones Industrial Average halted as of the August 22nd critical reversal date. A sharp decline in Bitcoin is underway. Gold and silver are rising sharply from trading cycle lows of August 20th. This time band of disruption, the TUMDI, is not over. It continues this week as Uranus turns retrograde on September 6th, 2 days after Mars squares Jupiter, and a day before a powerful lunar eclipse. The combination can be potent, as in major reversals in trends and a culmination of primary cycles, being lows or highs depending on the market. Consider that Uranus is the planet of sudden and unexpected events or decisions. Jupiter is the planet of exaggeration. Mars is the planet that activates or triggers actions. a lunar eclipse, a full moon where the Earth blocks out the view of the moon, which in mutable signs corresponds to emotional outbursts, pettiness, and flip-flops on past promises. And for the next 2 weeks, transiting Chiron, the wounded healer, will be retrograde and in conjunction with Saturn on the New York Stock Exchange chart opposite its Neptune. When Chiron activates a chart, there is often pain that is followed by healing. The bottom line indicated by the geocosmic picture is this: the United States and other world stock markets are vulnerable to a sharp decline. It is possible that their primary cycles are also in late stages when reversals are due. But so far, the chart patterns remain strong, suggesting that the longer-term trend still remains bullish. This may be one of those times when aggressive contrarian traders can make a substantial profit from the short side quickly. But as of yet, it is not a sign that the longer-term bull market is over. And now those promised longer-term thoughts and opinion. First of all, a quote from the Wall Street Journal from Thursday. The Trump era, it says, is marked by concentrating federal power in the Oval Office. I have the right to do anything I want, Trump said on Monday. End quote. And also from Thursday's Journal, Trump triples down on lawfare. Quoting, Mr. Trump even suggested reinvestigating former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie over the 2013 and 14 hoopla of Bridgegate, or, quote, the sake of justice, and because, quote, no one is above the law. This Trump, quote-unquote, skill not only is nothing to be proud of, it's a broken campaign promise. Mr. Trump passionately decried the legal campaigns against him and vowed to put an end to lawfare if elected. He insisted that his retribution, quote-unquote, would be through winning office and making our country successful. What turns it into lawfare is the singling out, the public broadcasting of accusation and investigation to pressure, threaten, disgrace, force concessions, or require massive financial outlay to defend against. That, and making a quote-unquote crime out of what is actually a political offense. The rejoinder from Trump loyalists is always one word: accountability. End quote. Ray's comments. I am in Europe now for the summer. This is the 30th consecutive year I have traveled/lived in Europe for much of the summer. And I must say, the degree of fear about the current world situation here is at a level I have never experienced before. This year is different, and the source of this fear is clearly the change in direction conducted by the current U.S. leadership. Europe, it seems to me, feels betrayed, abandoned, and bullied, no longer supported or trusted by the U.S. In turn, Europe no longer trusts the U.S. on its word and goodwill, quote-unquote. The U.S. is losing a valuable strategic partner both politically and economically. The U.S. administration has stated that many world leaders have expressed their admiration and awe at what its leadership has accomplished since the beginning of the year. But that is not the reality I am experiencing on the ground here. To the contrary, the overwhelming sense is one of fear to speak out and apprehension about the future related to the new policies being enacted, rather than admiration. Europe has seen elements of this play many times in its history. The U.S. has not. This eruption of fear and insecurity is classic Saturn conjunct Neptune, especially as it crosses the world point of 0 degrees Aries, ingressing from the last sign to the first sign of a new celestial order. Specifically, Saturn is associated with fear, and Neptune with imagination and fantasy, even hopes and dreams. So one is justified in asking, are these fears real or imagined? Is this a dream of hope for the new world emerging, or a nightmare that will cause immense suffering for the multitudes of people throughout the world? I have an astrological theory on this question. When two planets are heading into a conjunction, the faster-moving body assumes dominance in the fight to integrate, to express the two principles. In this theory, Saturn is now the dominant planet as it approaches and will soon cross in front of Neptune, which technically will happen on February 20th, 2026, in the geocentric model, as seen from Earth. In this stage, Saturn, of fear, blocks out the presence or the expression of Neptune, of hope. Everybody knows something is awry, unreal, but nobody is able to stop it. Neptune, being blocked, behaves like paralysis. It becomes passive out of fear, Saturn, of what might happen if it is not allowed to be kind, gentle, compassionate, and caring for others, Neptune. It's interesting that some well-known leaders now consider empathy, Neptune, a weakness, even a form of psychological dysfunction. This is especially pronounced as Saturn is in Aries, a combination leading to the idea that might is right, and can often express itself as the bully, coercing others who are less powerful to its will. I have the right to do anything I want to is a classic expression of this signature by those in power who are detached from reality. The corollary to that is, only I am above the law. Everyone else must be held accountable. However, in the theory I have presented here, Saturn will soon pass or separate from its conjunction to Neptune. Its shadow over Neptune will give way, and Neptune's qualities will again begin to regain their power. It won't happen all at once and may not even be apparent until Saturn leaves Aries, the sign it shares with Neptune, until April 2028. The question then is, can the world order and global alliances as we know it, which is being radically altered now while Saturn in Aries is so dominant, can they last until then? And that is quite a welcome back to our newsletter author, Ray Merriman. When he sent this out yesterday, he said, boy, a lot has happened since he has been gone. Thank you so much for listening. Kristin Lawhead and I will be doing a webinar on this upcoming eclipse, and we're going to be talking about Uranus going in retrograde and being so strong this week. That is Sunday, as in August 31st, and it's at 1 p.m. You can register at hightimelineliving.com if you'd like to join us. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening.